When two farmers realized their beloved mare was slipping away, they had to face a heartbreaking possibility: putting her down. But then, something no one expected happened, and it changed everything. It started early one morning at the McIntyre Lippington farm in Somerset, England. As the sun began to stretch across the quiet pastures, Donald and Jane walked out to start their day. But instead of the usual peaceful routine, they found their 16-year-old mare, Beatrice, lying motionless in the field. Her body looked even larger than usual, her abdomen badly swollen. They called out to her, their voices soft and shaky. But she barely moved. Her breathing was shallow, and she groaned quietly, as if even that took too much strength. Jane dropped to her knees beside her, brushing a hand down her side. "Come on, girl," she whispered. But Beatrice didn't respond. It didn't take long for panic to set in. Beatrice's weight, combined with her swollen belly, made the situation incredibly dangerous. She had been lying there too long. Horses aren't meant to stay down for hours. Their own body weight can crush their organs if they do. Donald ran to get help while Jane stayed by her side, stroking her neck gently. Beatrice blinked slowly, her eyes cloudy and tired. Soon farm hands and their trusted vet arrived. Everyone tried everything: soft coaxing, ropes, even tilting her gently to shift her weight. Nothing worked. The vet suggested they try lifting her using the tractor. They wrapped her carefully in padded straps and slowly engaged the machine. But even with that, her heavy body didn't budge. Someone brought out a warm cloth to wipe down her neck, and another placed a small bucket of water nearby, just in case she could muster the strength to drink. She didn't. Hours passed. Everyone could feel the heaviness of the moment. Jane had to step away for a second, just to catch her breath. She stood under a tree, watching from afar, wiping away tears with her sleeve. Donald paced in circles, clenching his jaw. The thought of losing Beatrice was too much to take in. 6 long hours after it all began, the mood shifted. The vet took one last look, crouched beside her, and felt her chest again. "We might have to make a decision," he said gently. The words no one wanted to hear. Jane walked back to Beatrice and sat in the grass, whispering softly to her like she did when the mare was just a foal. Then the vet noticed something odd, a bit of swelling near her underside that hadn't been there before. It was subtle, but enough to catch his eye. He gently pressed a hand there, thinking it might be something unrelated, maybe even hormonal. But the bigger issue was clear. Beatrice couldn't breathe properly. Her lungs were being crushed by the weight of her own body. If they didn't get her on her feet soon, there would be no turning back. Still, nothing they tried worked. "She just needs gravity to help us," the vet muttered. "But we can't make gravity work if she won't stand." The team had exhausted every idea. Everyone stepped back, uncertain of what to do next. And just when it felt like they had reached the end, something happened in the distance. The vet walked back to the group and explained the situation one last time. Donald and Jane listened quietly, trying to stay strong, but they were falling apart inside. They had done everything they could think of, and nothing had worked. The hopelessness hung in the air like a thick fog. The only option left was unthinkable. But then, something no one could have expected happened. From across the farm, Bo, Beatrice's longtime stablemate, had just been let out of his stall. The handlers figured he might stretch his legs for a bit, maybe distract them all for a while, but this stallion had other plans. Bo had been with Beatrice for years. They were nearly inseparable. Whether grazing in the field or resting in the stable, the two had always been side by side. They weren't just herd mates. They were bonded in a way that was obvious to anyone who spent time around them. And somehow, Bo could sense that something was very wrong. Instead of heading to the open pasture like he normally did, he paused. His ears perked toward the gathering in the distance. Without hesitation, he broke away from the handler leading him and started trotting across the yard. At first, the team thought he'd just gotten spooked, but he wasn't running blindly. He was headed straight for Beatrice. Bo slipped past the group and made his way right to her side. He didn't stop or flinch. He walked directly up to her and started nudging her gently. He lowered his head and gripped her halter with his teeth, giving it a tug. Everyone froze. No one said a word. It wasn't panic, it was awe. Bo began pulling on her slowly, almost like he was trying to wake her up. The vet stepped forward instinctively, but Donald raised a hand and whispered, "Let him try." The stallion kept working, softly nipping her neck, pushing against her side, even letting out low, throaty snorts that no one had heard from him before. It was like he was pleading with her. A farmhand quietly whispered, "He's telling her to fight." Then, a flicker. Beatrice's leg twitched. Jane gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The mare shifted slightly. Then again, her eyes blinked slowly, as if trying to focus. The group leaned in, barely breathing. Bo didn't stop. He moved beside her and gave her a light shove with his chest. Not forceful, just enough to make her feel him there. With his support and a few weak efforts of her own, Beatrice began inching her way upright. First her neck, then her front legs tucked beneath her. The crowd erupted in quiet gasps and murmurs. Finally, slowly, she stood, wobbly, shaky, but standing. No one could believe it. Jane had tears rolling down her cheeks. Donald let out a sharp breath and gave Bo a stunned nod, like he somehow understood what the stallion had done. The vet stepped back, shaking his head with wide eyes. That's just not something you see every day," he whispered. The moment was almost surreal. Bo nuzzled Beatrice again, gently brushing his head along hers, as if to say, "You're okay now." Word spread quickly. Neighbors and other farmers came by that week just to see the miracle horse who saved his best friend. Some brought apples, others just stood quietly at the fence in awe. A few even left handwritten notes, thanking the farm for sharing their story. The vet still had concerns, though. Now that Beatrice was up, he needed to run some tests, to figure out what had caused the bloating and whether it might happen again. But when he tried to approach, Bo stepped directly between them. Head down, muscles tense. It was clear he was protecting her. The farmers hesitated. They didn't want to put Beatrice through more stress. She had just stood up. They couldn't bear to see her go back down. But the vet was gentle. "If there's something else going on inside, I need to know," he said softly. Still, Bo didn't move, and just like that, the story took another unexpected turn. The vet stood back, quietly watching Bo standing guard beside Beatrice like a soldier. It was more than protective. It felt intentional, even urgent. The way he shielded her from others and stayed within touching distance wasn't lost on anyone. The vet turned to Donald and Jane with a new level of seriousness. "I think something deeper is going on," he said, "and I need to run a full round of tests to find out what." Though still shaken from the ordeal, the farmers agreed. If there was any chance of catching something serious early, they had to try. So the vet got to work. First, he ran a few blood tests, and the results confirmed what he suspected. Beatrice had unusually high levels of inflammation. That lined up with her swollen stomach, but it still wasn't enough to tell the full story. The next step was an ultrasound. When the vet explained that he needed to check her internal organs more thoroughly, Jane's face paled. The thought of something more serious hiding inside Beatrice made her feel sick with guilt. Guilt for not noticing sooner, for thinking of giving up. The next morning, the vet arrived early with a portable ultrasound machine. Everyone gathered around quietly, including Bo, who stayed nearby with watchful eyes. As the vet carefully moved the probe across Beatrice's abdomen, the screen showed nothing obvious. He scanned, repositioned, rescanned. Still no clear blockage, no signs of tumors, just an enormous amount of gas pressing against her organs. It was a relief that there was no visible mass, but also frustrating. Why was this happening if nothing showed up? The vet explained that the pressure in her abdomen could still lead to another collapse if she wasn't closely monitored. So Donald arranged for a farmhand to stay with her at all times, and Bo, of course, never left her side. Over the next couple of days, the vet kept a quiet distance, choosing to observe rather than intervene. He watched Beatrice's daily routine, the way she walked a few steps at a time, then rested. The way her ears would twitch a second before Bo nudged her forward again, urging her to keep going. It was clear now. Bo could feel her pain long before the humans ever picked up on it. The vet started logging every detail. He watched what she ate, how often she drank water, and even tracked her bowel movements. That's when something clicked. He noticed that when Beatrice tried to relieve herself, she seemed to struggle. Her posture changed. Her tail moved differently. It looked uncomfortable. And when she finally did go, it didn't look right. Not at all. He took a sample for testing. A few days later, the results came back. And what he found was alarming. There was a toxin present in her waste, likely the source of her intense stomach pain and inflammation. But the real mystery? No other animals on the farm were affected, not even Bo. The vet called Donald and Jane together to share the news, but before he could even finish explaining, Jane suddenly gasped and stood up. She rushed over to a small cabinet, pulled out a thin pamphlet, and handed it to him. "This," she said, "is what we started feeding her." It was a brochure from a feed company they'd met at a horse care conference. The brand specialized in food for aging horses, ones with joint issues and mobility problems. Beatrice had just started slowing down recently, so they'd switched her over to help support her aging body. No other horse on the farm had been given this feed. That was it. That had to be the source. The vet took a sample of the food right away and sent it to the lab for testing. When the results came back, they were worse than anyone expected. The pellets were full of low-grade filler dust, and not only that, the nutritional content printed on the label didn't match the actual ingredients. It was contaminated, and Beatrice had been eating it daily. The vet rushed back to the farm, sample bag in hand, and gave Donald and Jane the news. They needed to stop feeding Beatrice that food immediately. After confirming the food was the problem, the vet didn't waste any time. He filed a formal report with the Livestock Food Regulatory Board. What happened next was just as remarkable as Beatrice's fall had been. Within days of changing her diet, Beatrice started to bounce back. Her stomach slowly deflated, and her energy returned in ways no one expected. The sparkle was back in her eyes. Even Bo, who'd been glued to her side for weeks, began to relax. It was as if he could feel that the danger had finally passed. He stopped hovering over her every second and started grazing again a few feet away, still nearby, but no longer guarding her like a soldier. That shift alone said everything. 2 weeks later, the vet ran another blood test, and the results were like night and day. Her inflammation levels had dropped dramatically. He smiled as he shared the news with Jane and Donald. "She's healing," he said, "and she's going to be just fine." The relief on their faces was indescribable. Meanwhile, the regulatory board launched an internal investigation. After reviewing the vet's findings, they confirmed the food company's product had been falsely approved. And to make matters worse, someone inside the organization had signed off on it despite the obvious risk. That discovery lit a fire under several farmers in the area. Jane and Donald weren't alone. Others had been feeding their horses that same product. Together, they filed a complaint and pursued legal action against the manufacturer. The group was eventually granted a large settlement, but when asked how they felt about the money, Jane said something that stuck with everyone. "We would have rather lost everything than see Beatrice suffer the way she did." Thankfully, Beatrice never knew the drama happening behind the scene. She was just thrilled to feel better and to be back outside, enjoying the warm sun on her coat and soft grass beneath her hooves. And, of course, her loyal companion Bo never left her side for long. The mare, who had once been too weak to lift her head, now ran across the pasture again, chasing after her best friend like nothing had ever happened. Thanks to a determined vet who followed his instincts and a stallion who simply refused to give up on his friend, Beatrice got the second chance she deserved. Donald and Jane never looked at animal companionship the same way again. They became strong advocates for safer food labeling and clearer feed standards, speaking out at events and sharing their story with anyone who would listen. But more than anything, they were reminded that the bond between two animals who grow up together can be more powerful than any machine, even a tractor. What a powerful story. Would you have believed a horse could do what a machine couldn't? And what are your thoughts on the toxic food that nearly took Beatrice's life? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and take care.